Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Five Heart Podcast. Brought to you by CoreNation.com, part of the SB Nation Podcast Network. I'm the guy who kind of feels like the guest on his very own show. My name is Greg Mahochko, and we got a full house for you. Let's go around the horn. At least, I don't know what order we're actually in when you see this. I just know that I'm over here. And to my left, our founder and fearless leader, John Dam Johnston. Hello, John.
Hi.
Moving on. Below me, again, purely speculative. I don't know how this will turn out. Is, as always, Todd Wolverton. Hello, Todd.
Greg, did you say below me?
I mean, you know, whatever. It's been a hell of a week.
I wasn't quite sure. No. The answer is no.
That's fine. That's fine. And back again. Gosh, it's so great to see him, to hear his voice. Dr. Offense, Hoss Reuter. Hoss, not even just Hoss, all of you guys. As everybody knows, I was not on last week's episode. I was on vacation with my family in Wisconsin at the Dells, not like in Madison. I didn't actually see the cesspool, but had a nice getaway with the family. So I was not here for the recording. I did listen to it just about as soon as it dropped. Terrific show across the board. I don't even know why I'm here.
Because we love you, Greg.
Thank you.
You're just a figurehead now.
That's fine. I'm just the guy who's going to point and say talk.
You're like Scott Frost.
Yeah. So does that mean I'm Mark Whipple?
Yes.
Like 30
Todd, who are you?
years younger.
Todd's Chenander. And John, because you're so special. Because you're so special, John. I'm
a special teams analyst.
Oh, man.
Don't be recording those illegal practices.
That'd be John. John's the one who actually clicks record. I'm telling you.
In this situation, I think John is Trev Alberts.
There you go.
Okay. It was really nice to hear some nice things about our athletic director on last week's show.
Did we hear nice things? Did I say nice things? Did somebody say nice
Hoss
things?
said nice things.
I'm also
Hoss
biased
talked about
as a UNO Mav.
I was going to say, he talked about the revitalization of the UNO athletics. And it was really touching to hear because we don't ever get that side of things when I'm surrounded by these two clowns. So thank you very much, Hoss.
You start this show by stabbing Todd right in the heart.
Hey, too, Brute.
He wants me to blow him, and then he stabs me.
What happens when you deny me, you die. No. So this is fun because on the pre-show, you guys were all talking about how terrific the YouTube video was from last week and all the views. And Todd's over here like, well, what's the common denominator? Who the hell wasn't here last week? That's why it was such a good show. So fuck you, Todd.
That was me who said that.
That was Hoss.
Well, fuck you, Todd.
See you guys. Adios. I can take a hint.
No, nobody better go anywhere. Good. I'm not the only one.
I just have my water.
I have water.
Some of Tennessee's finest, Copenhagen.
Hoss, do you remember the good old days when John used to drink on the show?
Yeah, I also remember the good old days when I used to drink on the show too.
You remember the bad old days when we had to drink on the show?
Oh God, 2017, Nebraska, Penn State. Yep. I think I killed like a 6-pack of Coors Banquet Tall Boys during that 3-hour long episode.
We have had some marathons. Todd and John, I mean, I know you've listened to them, but you've never sat in for a recording that was as long as the football game.
No, I don't think I could do that.
And that came on the heels of I watched that game that day at a Friendsgiving, like a Thanksgiving get together with friends. So like I had been drinking beer and eating turkey and pumpkin pie all day long, came home and drank more beer and bitched about the game.
I get to be on long Zoom meetings with developers and IT people, and I get done with those, and I honestly just have to go lay down. They're so exhausting. So I don't. That's why I kind of try to push us to be 45 minutes to an hour just because this is exhausting after a while.
That's how my 3-hour grad classes on Zoom felt. I hated those, especially like 8 a.m. Just wake up and hop on Zoom. Not fun.
Yeah.
John, you should tell me what my wife tells me. You got a 10-minute window, otherwise I'm falling asleep. 3 times in that time. No, I'm kidding.
I can
Todd
make an
it.
old man comment here, but
well, John, let's talk about your Blue Chew.
well, you do have to time that correctly. It's a bizarre. It's not just like, hey, Mr. Happy's here and he's happy already. You know what I mean? Oh, look, the wind blows and you're standing up for salute. Getting old and having your heart broken. I mean, it has its, fucks up your life in a lot of ways. Okay, let's go to Nebraska football, you motherfucker.
I was going to segue with perfect segue to talk about how Nebraska football has broken our hearts and lowered our expectations. And,
And there's some fucking people out there that think that a bowl game is good enough and Scott Frost needs more time. What the hell? Who are you people?
There's people out there that 5 wins is good enough for them to give them another year. I mean, have you guys gotten on Husker Twitter recently?
It's not a great place.
It's a terrifying place, man. Dissenting opinions not tolerated.
And I, which is unfortunate because that's how we are as a society. So I get it. It's a microscope on one. You'll get the same thing on any topic. Like you'll get the same thing on politics, religion, Marvel versus DC movies. Vince McMahon, whatever is in the news. I mean, you'll always have there's no civil discourse, but we're not here to talk about that because we're not going to change anybody's minds. Really,
here's the thing. The dissenting opinions part doesn't bother me. It's the dishonesty with which it's carried out.
The intellectual dishonesty. Yes.
Yeah. The one thing that bothers me about the give him more time. And then you see these people going, well, we can't keep this carousel rotating coaches. You motherfuckers weren't for keeping Mike Riley around after 3 years. And you know that.
I mean, he was essentially fired after 3 games.
Yeah, don't give me this bullshit about more time and it takes more time and we can't keep rotating coaches because that's absolute bullshit.
Well, I'm glad that's coming up because I wanted to. I don't know if I want to necessarily lead with it, but I wanted to get there. 20 years of different coaches. If you go back to, a few years prior, Frank Solich, whatnot, but I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Solich's last year was 2003.
Yep, 3.
Okay, so let's say the last 20 years, 2 of those coaches were ridden out of town, but they didn't have any Nebraska ties, and that's Bill Callahan and Mike Riley. Like Bo Pellini, you can say, but he was a defensive coordinator. He was here prior, and he was welcome. He was damn near begged to come back, and 9 and 10 wins were, I guess, the standard, but it was the sideline temperament, and it was
blown out in big games,
and I was getting to that too. The games that mattered the most were where the team as a whole, coaching staff included, kind of tucked their tails and looked like a scared puppy dog. But he was ridden out. Not, I think the excuse of the on the field performance was, well, I can't win the big one. We've plateaued. We should be competing for conference championships. I don't disagree with any of that, but really, I think he was ran out of town for his off the field. It wasn't on the field. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we look at the last 20 years of Nebraska football, and Todd, we'll start with you because I feel like I've been picking on you a little this show, and I want to put my best foot forward. Todd, who would you say is your favorite? Not going to go necessarily best because but since this is a subjective question, who's your favorite Husker football coach of the last 20 years and why? and head coach. I'm sure you can.
I was going to say, wait, now you're taking away a possible answer for me.
So you can't say Barney Cotton. I'm sorry.
No. Okay. So Bo Pellini, he would be my favorite Husker coach in the last 20 years. I wasn't one of those people that turned on Bo. I was very frustrated, in some of those big games, but I kept thinking at some point in time, they'll get it figured out. And I understand his recruiting wasn't the greatest. But I thought in the back of my mind, when this guy starts pulling in players that can compete, from a physical standpoint in the Big Ten Conference, he'll right this ship. They'll be okay. But I couldn't defend him with the off-field stuff that happened. I mean, he shot himself in both feet, and they didn't have any choice. I mean, that's kind of like death by cop, suicide by cop, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he had to go. But, I publicly said I was okay with Mike Riley coming on. I thought he was a pretty good coach. Never had a high number of wins, but I thought that had more to do with, the fact that he was on, at Cal Berkeley and places like that, and I thought he was going to be the guy that could get it done. But no, I'd say Bo Pellini. He's my favorite in the last 20 years.
I will go around the entire table, but I want to ask if you, and I know we all look back at the move to the Big Ten and say it was the best move, from the financial standpoint. But do you think, and Todd, this is again addressed solely to you, do you think that moving to the Big Ten, not to say it was like the final nail in the coffin, but man, it didn't do Bo and his style, his schemes, it didn't do him any favors?
Well, Bo's schemes worked very well against, the basketball on turf offenses that, were showing up and dominating the Big 12 conference at that time. I think what kind of surprised me, and I'm not a Division I head football coach, but what kind of surprised me is that Bo didn't start recruiting with an eye towards going to the Big Ten. I mean, he really didn't change, in my opinion, the type of players that he was bringing on board, because he's going to win today, win today. And I guess we are in a win today mentality, and we were back then too. So, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. Final nail in the coffin, I still think that had Bo not melted down and just absolutely, felt like it was him and his team against the world, I think they could have had success.
I want to touch on that recruiting statement very briefly. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're given about 1 year, right? 1 year's notice from the announcement that we're moving to the Big Ten to the actual move, correct?
I don't recall. I thought it was more than a year, but I could be wrong there too.
Yeah, it was 1 year. We announced July 1st.
Well, which you really can't prepare then.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the tough. I mean, you have to change your entire recruiting philosophy over the course of one football season. And so I'm not defending Bo. But
he wouldn't change. He wouldn't change. That's just the bottom line.
Even when we were moved to the Big Ten. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't change his defense. He claimed all the time that he didn't have to change his defense. His defense was fine. And then Melvin Gordon would go for 409 yards in 3 quarters. So,
I think Melvin Gordon just scored on Nebraska again, actually.
Yeah. So
sorry, Hoss.
I think he proved after he left Nebraska that he didn't really belong as a Division I head coach. He didn't have the mentality for it. I know Haas wants to stay stuff. Go ahead, Haas.
I was going to say, I think the biggest critique I would have against Bo's recruiting leading into joining the Big Ten would be not capitalizing on Ndamukong Suh's superstardom and going out and getting, he should have had every 5-star defensive lineman lined up, knocking on the door, wanting to come play here. Instead, it's, Thad Randall was a serviceable defensive tackle, but he was nowhere near a superstar. We had such bad depth problems by year 2 in the Big Ten that we were starting a 260-pound Cam Meredith at 3 technique against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. And so, like, as Todd pointed out, having a year to recruit to a different style of play you're going to see in a conference, that's really no fault of Bo's, but he should have been more proactive in terms of, parlaying Sue's success into getting all the big-time defensive linemen to come here. And also the game offensive football passed his defense by. And I think the biggest evidence of that would be we went out to UCLA in 2012 and Noel Mazzoni just tuned up Bo's defense like a fiddle. I mean, I remember watching that game at a bar and just like wishing I had a notebook with me, as pissed off as I was about the game, to take notes about UCLA's offense. So it's a lot of different factors: the recruiting, the off-field issues, offensive football evolving at such a high rate, pace in that time frame. But if I was going to pick a favorite Husker coach the past 20 years, it's not popular, but I'd say Bill Callahan. He modernized Nebraska. He brought us out of the Stone Age. We recruited better than we ever had. I mean, he was an offensive line guy. Those offensive lines were actually really solid under Callahan. Put a lot of guys in the NFL that played for a long time. He really, we majored in inside and outside zone. And it's just a shame, couldn't get together. I mean, you blame Sam Keller. You can blame Callahan calling Osborne a crusty old fuck, behind the scenes, blame him on whatever you want. But the man did modernize Nebraska football, brought us out into the 21st century of big time college football.
And he could recruit his ass off.
Yeah. I mean, we've never gotten back to that level of recruiting. Again,
a problem with leadership.
Yep. And I bet he took the job thinking, I'll be there 3, 4 years, turn him around and being respectable, bring him into the 21st century, bounce back to the NFL.
Yeah. But he was a guy that
he knew what he was talking about. He wasn't a fraud of a coach. It just didn't work out here.
I'd say that his biggest flaw was when the shit hit the fan, he hid.
Yeah.
And he deflected and he hid. You know what I mean? I always think, when I think of Bill Callahan, I think of a customer site I worked at where there was a woman it was a marketing company, and there was a woman who would just disappear and we couldn't find her. And then one day we found her and she was underneath her desk, and she had literally gone underneath her desk and pulled her chair in to make it look like she wasn't there. Damn. And she couldn't handle the stress of the job, and she just couldn't quit. She couldn't do anything. And then whenever I think of Bill Callahan, I think of that's how he handled the pressure of being the head coach at Nebraska. He just kind of disappeared when it came to leadership.
Yeah, and you can't lead from under a rock, as Bo Pellini once said about Sean Eichhorst in that leaked audio recording. He said many things, but we're not going to repeat those on there.
Actually, that's a pretty profound thing that he said.
Yeah. Like, when I remember hearing it, even then, I wasn't a Bo guy there at the end, but when that came out and he said that, I was like, he is right. You can't lead from under a rock. And we kind of saw that in 2017 leading up to Eichhorst's firing. He deflected a lot. He insulated himself with, you remember all the stories about how many lawyers and administrators he hired in the AD, he just tried to insulate himself. And that bunker mentality, it's a losing mentality. Just ask Adolf Hitler. Bunker mentality doesn't work.
The problem about Eichhorst, I think the mistake that Eichhorst made was that he didn't let Bo coach one more season. He fired him at 9-3, and now we look back and we go, he could have been better. And the reality is I think at the end, when he was fired, his next recruiting class had shit tons of depth chart problems. He hated recruiting, and honestly, our fan base, between him dealing with Eichhorst and dealing with us as a fan base, I think he was exhausted with all of it, and I think the next season he probably would have had a losing record. And then
because when you think about all the talent he would have lost from 14 to 15, I mean, Amir Abdullah, Kenny Bell, Randy Gregory, all those guys gone. And Yeah, I mean, like
No
Mike
replacements.
Riley inherited a ticking time bomb of a depth
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah.
And now we come to Scott Frost. Is that where you're going, Greg? Is that where you're going? Are you going to Scott Frost? Are you?
I was going to ask you, John.
What are you
John,
gonna
who's
ask
your
me?
favorite?
John, who's your
Frank's-
favorite Husker
Frank
coach? for the
Solich.
last- Well, tell us why, Shoots.
Well,
Because he won.
because he was a Husker man. He was a Nebraska guy. He was Tom Osborne's buddy. And he was doomed. Frank was doomed
Oh, yeah.
the moment Tom said hire him. Because following a legend, I mean, that'd be like me going on stage after Bill Burr. You know what I mean? I'm going to go on stage and people are going to look at me and go, Bill Burr, who are you?
Oh, I think you're
I know
funny.
you look ranty, but you suck. Doesn't matter if I was really good that night.
Just do your whole get drunk and get mad at people online.
But Frank was screwed. He really was. He was going to get fired because he wasn't Tom Osborne. Sooner or later, and I think the quality of the program dropped. But
He was in a no-win position
he was.
because as close as they came, you look at like 2001, as close as they came to replicating that success of the 90s, not all the pieces were there. And there had to be for lack of better term, there had to be a scapegoat. When you look at 2002, 2003, it's...
Don't get blown out by Kansas State.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's simple.
Okay, and I don't... That's fine. I'm not disputing that.
Sorry, I just want
But-
to you some shit.
That's fine. I can take it. I got thick skin. How many... Is it just because it was Kansas State? Because how many times did Bo get blown out and had a lot of opportunity after that,
Same reason why I had the issue with blowouts. I mean, like, granted, I was 13 years old in 2003, so I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground, except for the fact that I liked football. But like, when you position yourself as always acting superior to Kansas State, and then they just kick your ass 2 years. Actually, I think it was 3 years in a row, 02, 03, 04, and they're pulling guys that you want, i.e. Darren Sproles, L. Roberson, guys like that. Like, you got a problem. Somebody's coming into your backyard. I mean, and they're kicking your ass. That, and I think Frank as a play caller just was not dynamic like Osborne was.
Just didn't quite mix it up enough to keep it interesting.
He just didn't have and again, I'm gonna go into like educational psychology, T.O. having a doctorate in that.
No, that's good because
my
that's some of
understanding
the stuff that Todd last week asked a question that I didn't ask 2 weeks ago. Where the hell you been? What were you doing? What the hell did that mean? This questions that I should ask when you came back. So I was tickled that Todd asked those questions. Todd, well done, sir. But that's great. Yeah, no, give us that perspective of it, because what I learned last week on the show from not being here is that Tom had just a completely different approach to coaching. So tell us about that.
Yeah, his approach to coaching was, from a teaching standpoint, it was equip players at each position with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to go out there and do their job, to execute. And he broke it down. I've seen some of the old position manuals where it breaks down step by step in like a task analysis of what you're supposed to do on a specific block if you're an offensive lineman, or what the quarterback's reading, when he gets to the line of scrimmage, the steps for a running back on an outside zone versus an inside zone or a counter play. And so, not leaving any detail out, he started from the smallest details, so everybody had a strong foundation of what to do. And then from the other side, if you're the defense going up against his offense, it's a 3-term contingency. Like, he has answers for everything. So, like, they're going to show, if we're going to run outside zone, might be a handoff, a stretch handoff to the back. Next play, it could be a pitch, might be an option play next. Later in his career, it might be a quarterback run, just a lead run out to the perimeter. But he's showing the defense things that look alike And then when they start really anticipating it, that antecedent, they're seeing it and they want to go after it. He hits them with something that looks the same, but it's completely different. So play action pass or a counter offer, or giving it to the fullback on the belly option, on the belly trap instead of just running the belly option. So when you put all those things together, like preparing your athletes to go out there and execute, and then forcing the defense to just have to prepare throughout the week to defend just the sheer volume of scheme that we ran. I mean, we had very simple blocking schemes. We had just tons of plays off of, 7 blocking schemes like John or Todd pointed out last week. I can't remember which one it was.
I don't think we talked about that on the show.
Yeah. And so when you're both putting your guys into a position to succeed, and then you're making it absolute hell for the defense to defend, and then you have a guy who knows how to time a play perfectly, or, patient enough to set up something for a couple plays down the road or the next series or late in the game when they're really taking the bait on anticipating what they think a play is, you're going to be a pretty damn good play caller. And then on top of that, because a lot of times in football, you'll see coaches, offensive coordinators, if they have better talent, they run a really boring offense because they can just overpower somebody. If they if they're outgunned talent-wise, they'll have a really creative offense because they have to cover up weaknesses. Right. He took the best of both worlds. We had supreme talent whether it's through recruiting or just strength and conditioning, development, and the teaching on the field, and paired it with an offense that was hell to defend. And so, that's what I love about Steve Sarkisian when he was at Alabama as the OC. It would have been easy for them just to roll out there and run inside zone, couple RPOs, couple of deep passes. But no, they used different motions. They made everything look the same and then built off of that. So Ohio State in the national championship game that year, they're having to communicate their coverage checks on the fly when they got all these motions going on, whether it's orbit or rocket or return motions. They don't know up from down. Like watching Werner, the safety nickel linebacker type for Ohio State, watching him try to chase down the Alabama receivers. He had no idea what he was doing. And then you see him in Big Ten play, and, he was everywhere. He was a tackling machine. So I love coaches that don't just rely on overpowering people.
I want to, and Todd, John, jump in if you have a thought, but going back just a minute or two to what you were talking about as far as setting something up now for next series, next quarter, later in the game. I feel like in today's game of football, there's so much impatience. Like, we got to hit that home run. I know it's a baseball analogy, but we got to get that Hail Mary. We got to score now. We got to build up there's no chipping away, is that kind of what you're talking about as far as some of that classic 90s offensive play calling?
Chipping away using the constraint theory of play calling. Okay, we're running this. It looks like this. Next series, we're going to run this.
You need to explain what a constraint play is.
Constraint is just sounds like, the name constraint. You're constraining the defense with what you're doing. So if you're going to run belly trap with the play side guard just kicking out the defensive end, the fullback running underneath that trap block, maybe next series you're going to run belly option where it looks the same. It starts saying quarterback puts it in the belly of the fullback, play side guard pulls, but instead of kicking out the defensive end, he wraps him or log blocks him to seal him off from the perimeter. And we're going outside instead of going inside. So
a simple piece of that would have been last year's Illinois game when they sold out against the run so much. One fucking counter play, and we win the game. One counter play counter plays.
The play I was just describing, the play side guard kicking out. During that game, I was sitting there going, if they're going to line up that wide, just run right inside them. Pull a play side guard, kick them out. We have the play in our offense. We ran it, probably 40 times last year. And that's what's frustrating. But to bring up back to Greg's point about chipping the ball down the field, driving. That's one thing I like about Whipple's offense. It wasn't a lot of chunk plays last year they had. They drove between the 20s, and when they got to the red zone, they got points. They didn't come away, empty-handed. It wasn't like Garrett Nelson's awesome, colorful explanation of what it felt like to lose games last year, talking to a girl at the bar, and at the end, her boyfriend comes and takes her home. That's what like coming up empty-handed in the red zone. You don't score.
But
double entendre there.
You're saying this too, and I don't disagree with any of it. But one of the quotes that has been in the paper from Frost from his time at media days was something along the lines of, "I don't mind having a running play take a loss if on two other plays we're blowing off the ball and we're getting big yards." And I'm not even actually sure what that really means, but Frost has made it clear he wants to hit the home runs. I mean, he's going for the home run a lot. And I'm still a little bit concerned, how these philosophies, how these mentalities between him and Whipple are going to merge a little bit here.
He also said that he wasn't going to keep his hands completely off the offense. So,
I wonder what it's going to be like if we've lost a couple of games and things are, the wagons are circled up, and is he going to, grab the play calling duties back? Because I'm with Todd here. Like there's kind of a little bit of a dissonance between what Whipple's offense shows and what Frost is saying.
And the other thing too, and I couldn't stand him, but Hayden Fry, he owned the statement, scratch where it itches. Well, hell, Tom Osborne was scratching where it itches, his entire career. And that's one of the things that kind of concerns me a little bit about what we've seen with some of the play calling is I think that's how you grind things out. That's how you sustain drives. You identify those weaknesses and you attack those weaknesses in different.
That's why Wisconsin, will just do what they do over and over and over again. Purdue does it in the passing game too. They'll find a slow outside linebacker and they will exploit him.
Yep.
And Minnesota has the slant.
I saw on media days the other day after I got over how weird PJ Fleck looks after his plastic surgery.
He looks like a serial killer.
I can't believe Minnesota won 9 games last year. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was like, I would kill to win 9 games. I hate losing to Minnesota. I know I said that last week, but that one really just gnaws at me.
You remember a couple of years ago when we were having various conversations, or they might have been on, Corn Nation, and some of the back and forth between some of the regulars there, ranking the Big Ten coaches. And almost to a person, everybody was ranking Scott Frost above PJ Fleck. We got the superior coach. And God damn, it's hard to swallow that is not a reality at this point in time.
He's a good coach, as nauseating as he is with his peppiness and sprinting down the sidelines at the end of the quarter and, doing the ski you ma chant in between quarters and all that. Greg, are you okay? You look like you're trying to take a dump.
I was. No, I was looking up this PJ Fleck plastic surgery thing. I didn't know anything about that.
Oh my God.
It's not the same person.
He literally used to look like a kind of like a clown used car salesman. Mm-hmm. Now he looks like a fucking serial killer. Yeah. He does. He looks like
we're going to see a little elf or something.
To borrow a phrase from The Sopranos, those eyes are like Manson lamps, just wide open.
He looked like, and this was my first thought from the first picture that I saw before I clicked it and saw like the bigger version of it. But my first reaction was he looks like a short, bald Joel McHale.
Or that Rob Corddry, that actor?
Yes.
From the show Ballers. That's what I know him from. It's a great show.
Or Children's Hospital, which was on Adult Swim years ago. Anyway, all right. So I think that concludes our. I want to say one other thing about Dr. Tom's approach. This is for anybody or all of you in no particular. How helpful was it that he had one of the best defensive coordinators of all time?
Oh, very helpful.
Very helpful.
And how helpful was it that he had, and I hate you both, John and Todd, because no, I'm sorry, not John and Haas. I love you, Todd. Clearly from the beginning of the show.
Yes, I
propositions.
guess. A little bit much here.
But he had one of the best offensive line coaches of all time, and you guys have the book, and you're both unwilling to share it with me.
I will never let that might get buried with me.
You can't take it with you, Haas. You can't take it with you.
Will. Hey, I found that thing for $3 at Half Price Books, still in the cellophane, and I could not get to the register fast enough. Like, I was almost convinced someone was going to come and rip it out of my hand. So I was like this with it. Dude, that thing was going for like $700 on Amazon.
Yeah,
and then I find it brand new.
Yeah. John shared a great story a few weeks back about how it was a gift. His copy was a gift from Ryan Tweedy of the Big Red Cobcast. And it was autographed, I believe, right, John?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me in football.
That thing is sitting on my bookshelf next to my psychology textbooks. That's how important it is.
I feel like Haas loves that book so much that he would take out like a blank page, a page that has nothing. It wouldn't lose any of the text, anything like that. But he would rip out a page that listen and give it to some artisan who would work it, cover it with epoxy so that he could give that to his future Mrs. Haas as an engagement ring.
No, I don't like to conflate football and women together, you know.
Okay.
I keep those things very separate.
Very wise. Very, very smart.
Well, it's the only one of us that's single and or unmarried, I should say.
Greg, I'll make a deal with you. If I ever find a copy of that book at a half-price bookstore, I will send it to you.
Yeah.
How about we do this? If you ever find a copy of that book, regardless, you buy it. I'll buy your copy off of you for $3, and then we'll be good.
Let me put this way: like when I read, I'm a big not when I'm reading fiction, I don't underline stuff. So I'm reading fiction; it's just for enjoyment. But like when I'm reading nonfiction books, whether it's textbooks, technical stuff, I'm a big underliner and I'll write on the pages, take notes. And that book, I will not do that. Like I absolutely refuse to do that. Yep. If I'm reading from it and I'm taking notes from it, like it will be on a separate piece of paper.
Let's go back to that though. I mean, the thing that always gets me about the Tom Osborne and his coaches thing is that everybody knows that Tom Osborne didn't raise his voice. He didn't swear.
Everybody else around him did.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Charlie McBride and Milt Tenneper, if you go back and I look at the book that Paul Koch wrote that I'm going to do a YouTube video about, I mean, it's very clear that both of those guys were just the meanest, nastiest sons of bitches that ever lived. So it's not just you have a head coach, though he has to have his coaches underneath him. In a way, like a mob boss. I guess they
don't all have to share the same personality.
The generals in a military, organization, generals typically going to be more even keeled, and it's the, lieutenants and non-commissioned officers who are out there as the ass kickers.
I encourage anybody, we don't typically have a lot of guests on the Five Heart podcast, but go to whatever podcast service you like the most, type in Big Red Cobcast, because they actually sat down more than once with Charlie McBride, and I believe early on with Milt Tenneper as well. So give those old episodes a listen. They're a lot of fun, and everybody but me is going to remember the name of the sports psychologist from the 90s.
Stark.
He was a guest on there as well. I mean, these are really good conversations that, I think partly because I'm not at all giving myself more credit than I deserve, but as like the kind of more often than not host of the 5 Heart podcast with my work schedule and the kids, like we don't start recording until 8:30 at night or 9 o'clock. And not too many guests would want to be like, yeah, let me clear out my Wednesday night. And, you know, when I could be watching CSI reruns with my wife, you know, so we don't have
the working man's podcast for the people by the people.
That's right. Yes, John.
Jack Stark, you know, the strength and conditioning people, the 2 coaches that we just named, all those people came together to build championship game winning teams. And I'm not just talking about national titles. I don't remember how many conference titles Tom Osborne won off the top of my head, but he always had a shot. I don't remember any years he really wasn't in the running for competing for the Big 12 or the Big 8 conference title. And now we have a coaching staff that in 4 years can't manage to beat Iowa, can't manage to beat Minnesota, can't beat Purdue, goes back and forth with Northwestern. I'm missing the 4th one. Wisconsin, we haven't beat
Iowa.
Wisconsin.
Illinois.
We can't. This isn't about. But when we started this, there's people that say he needs more time. He's not even coming close to beating a shitty division full of people.
That's the thing when a lot of people around Omaha, you know, none of you guys are in the Omaha area, but the people that I know, it's always, oh, it took Tom Osborne 21 years to get to that point. And I always be like 21 years, and he was losing to elite Oklahoma teams, elite West Coast schools, Penn State, Colorado when they got really good under McCartney. We can't even beat fucking Lovie Smith's Illinois team a week before Thanksgiving in 2020. We get housed at home 41-23. We can't even beat Illinois with a first-year head coach.
It didn't take 20 years for Tom to start winning.
Yeah, that's like saying, if people said that, it'd be like, did it take him 20 years to go to a bowl game?
Right. And that's kind of the thing. You know, I guess you look at him at media days. I didn't watch it. I saw the Twitter reactions to it. People said that he was very kind of gruff or very abrupt and stuff like that. And Tom Chattel wrote back-to-back articles. He kind of went, what? I think in the first one, he's like
hitting the sauce there, you know.
I don't know what the hell he's doing. But in the first one, he's like, yeah, Scott Frost didn't take this seriously. And then the next one was a complete 180 degrees then. You're like, what the hell are you even writing now? So I didn't really get what he was getting on about. But
you know, I don't blame him for pointing out like there was no bravado this year, because Frost came in with a lot of bravado and, you know, swagger, for lack of a better term. And when he said, you know, we hope the Big Ten has to adjust to us. Yeah, hell yeah, I was excited. I was ready to run through a brick wall when he said that.
I remember that.
2018, it looked like that was what was going to happen. We put up 500 yards of offense in 8 straight games. You know, we were really clicking by the end of the year. But, you know, he got humbled. And, you know, I'd like to, if he was going to turn it around, I'd like to say, oh, well, you know, he got humbled and he's going with a, you know, speak softly and carry a big stick approach. But the past 4 seasons prove that, you know, I don't think it's going to get done.
Yeah.
You know, people have analyzed, and people are going to continue to analyze, you know, Scott Frost's quote unquote performance, you know, at media days. And, you know, once he started answering questions, I don't, you know, I'm not disappointed in any of his answers. You know, I'm not going to tear apart. I think he answered questions. So I just found it very strange that he's the first guy up and he just stands at the podium. I mean, you know, he doesn't even greet, welcome, acknowledge, or whatever. I mean, we need that what Kayleigh McElhaney, Jen Psaki. We need somebody. I mean, what the hell?
Press secretary.
Yeah. I mean,
and here's Scott Frost.
Here's Scotty.
He, you know, was he drunk? Was he, what the hell?
I don't know. Lights the night before.
It just, if he wanted to project this persona of we're all business. We know we got to win. That's what we're focused on. I mean, if he wanted to, leave the swagger at home, whatever. If that's what he wanted to project, I'm all for that. Be humble. But geez, he looked like a dork,
You can be humble and still be polished and have an opening statement.
Hey, good morning.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to the season. I'm not going to give any speeches. Let's just get to your questions and I'll be respectful of your time and answer them to the best of my ability. Something.
Crack a few self-deprecating jokes about, the best.
Who's really good at this? Who's really excellent at this?
Who?
It's Kevin Warren.
I think he's doing a good job, actually, as Big Ten commissioner.
Well, he is such a polished bureaucrat that he understands how to exactly deal with the media. Exactly. It's gross to the point of gross. When somebody asks him a question, his first response is, "That's a very good question, Tom." Blah, 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 blah.
God,
even Bill Belichick would have said,
go ahead, Todd.
Even Bill Belichick would have said, what the hell you want to know? He would have at least acknowledged that there are people there.
To John's point about that's a very good question. Anytime I had to do that during like a grad school presentation or facilitation, I felt like such a douchebag being like, "Oh, that's a very good question. Let me tell you, like it works, but yeah, it almost feels slimy."
Kevin Warren was asked about all these new schedules, the USC, UCLA joining the conference, how the players are going to handle traveling all over because nobody gives a shit about the players that are going to be making tons of money. And what did he respond with? "We have a student advisory council that we're going to have so we can listen to their concerns." And completely ignore them, but that's the answer. "We have a council that we formed, and a task committee, and a task force, and a committee, and they're just so good. He is good at this bureaucracy thing.
To your point,
he really took over at a bad time. To COVID being his first year as commissioner, like that wasn't going to do him any favors. But I don't mind him. Husker Twitter really hates him. Husker Twitter hates everybody. So.
I have come to the conclusion that Husker Twitter, maybe just Husker fans, period, just have a problem with authority. I don't think the idea of authority meshes well with our, broad strokes there, pioneer sense of like, we don't need you,
I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I kind of feel like you can tell them, hey, it's a bad product. You can be critical. Well, a true fan's never critical. A true fan is a true believer.
I don't know.
I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of comments hating on this episode.
I think Twitter is just a cesspool of grumpiness and hate anyway. But
it's a dark place.
It is.
I mean, all social media is really.
Instagram. I like Instagram.
While we're there, can we shine a light on a fellow coronationer?
Okay.
Of course. Our guest our listener of the week. Is it your buddy Josh?
It's not. I meant a fellow contributor to coordination. On Instagram, Nate Meets World. It's our very old Nathaniel Perlow who travels, and I think right now he's down in South or Central America. And just follow if you want to see the world from the comfort of your mobile device. Throw him a follow and just check it out. Nate Meets World. I think
it's like a combination of like Lowell Thomas, Anthony Bourdain, and Ernest Hemingway all rolled into one.
That is lofty praise.
I mean, seriously, like I see I've followed him on Instagram since I first started contributing to coordination. I'm like, damn, I wish I could travel like that.
Yeah.
I started following him on Instagram about an hour ago, and I haven't regretted it for a second. We were, oddly enough, folks, we were going to talk about the quarterback room this episode, and I don't think we're going to get there, but that's okay. I want to touch on one thing. It's not like a point of contention. I don't want to start a debate, but I know that Logan Smothers got brought up last week when you're talking about the Michael Whipple offense, and how I think it was reported that Casey Thompson took the first snap of fall camp, and that's important. But Logan Smothers, and I think Todd, I don't say this to throw you under the bus. You said, it'd be great, because I think that the communal opinion was, he'd be great in, if you're going to do an RPO or more option, because he is quick footed. He'd be great, pardon the pun, option in a package like that. This is more of a question. Again, I'm not trying to stir a debate, but if you're the defense and you see a guy coming in for, maybe you have a little film so he can do X, and there's a little film on Logan after the Iowa game. Does that not just make it that much easier for you in defensive play call? Anybody can answer. The first time, long time listener, first time caller. I'll hang up and listen.
No. No, it doesn't, because, well, number one, we have it. If you're talking right now specifically about having a new offensive coordinator or Nebraska situation, I still think they're going to be running everything is a lot different than it was the year before. But I mean, think about having a game plan. Let's go to the NFL. I mean, how would you game plan and how for Aaron Rodgers differently than you would for Mahomes, for Joe Burrow? I mean, you're looking at quarterbacks that can, take off and run and cause disruption that way versus quarterbacks that, like Burrow. I don't think Burrow's known for, or Rodgers really. They're going to stay in the pocket and move around a lot. They can extend plays, but your defense is predicated on probably them as a player. I'm just making this shit up as I'm going. I think when Logan Smothers comes in the game, I don't think he's that much different than Chuba Purdy or Casey Thompson, honestly. Just because we have film on him. I think all three of those quarterbacks, to a certain degree, are going to be mobile running quarterbacks. They may not run the option, all three of them, because you're probably going to be willing to sacrifice Logan Smothers a lot more than you are Casey Thompson. But I don't think that you change your I think you look at the alignments and you look at what's going on with the way they're lined up, and you just try to get the math right. At least that's where I think the college is.
I guess
the NFL is more about scheming single players against single players to find weakness.
That's what I was about to say, John. At the college level, it's more about preparing for the schemes that you're going to see each week.
Right.
There's such a wide variety of schemes that everybody runs. In the NFL, it's more of a matchup league. So you're really scheming around a really good quarterback and their style, or, their threats on the perimeter, or whether they have a really good run game. So I don't think it'd make a big difference in terms of how defensive coordinators prepare for us. Logan Smothers they'd probably mix in some option for him, on 3rd and 2, run a speed option out of the gun, or, quarterback drawer, and you just maybe be a little bit more mobile, but I think it'd be at its essence the same overall offense.
I guess the crux of my question is, you always, maybe not as much now, but you used to hear about that 2 quarterback system, right? And each one has their specialty. And I feel like if I'm the defensive coordinator, if I see quarterback 2 coming in, well, I'm like, well, shit, we know what to expect, or at least more likely to expect, And so I as a novice, as a moron, which I proudly claim to be, I feel like that's a little bit concerning. I feel like we're making it a little too easy on the defense now. And this is different from, what we were talking about earlier with the different looks that, we were able to present in the 90s for, or different options out of the same look, I should say, under, Tom Osborne and that style of football. It's if you're bringing in a Logan Smothers and you've never seen Casey Thompson or Chuba Purdy run an option, and you're like, oh, well, Logan Smothers is coming in at 3rd and 2. Let's watch for that, QB speed option, or something like I feel like we talk about I think last year. I know this got brought up last week's episode, but it's like when Illinois came out in this defensive whatever, we had to throw away half of our playbook type of thing. I feel like some defensive coordinators might key on a particular player and what they are more likely to do.
Keep in mind the tendencies can be used against people too. And that's exactly how Minnesota won their game against us last year.
Especially later in the season after tendencies have been established, a lot of times they'll flip them.
But you saw Tanner Morgan come into the game and run their offense, and you see Cole Kramer come in. And do you remember what they run with Cole Kramer? They mostly ran just like a wildcat type.
Yeah, they ran a little quarterback G lead.
Yeah, and then toward the end of the game, the one time in the entire fucking game when Kramer was supposed to keep the ball, I think they ran like something that looked like a counter. And one of their backs took off the opposite direction, and our entire team was following Cole Kramer because that's what he'd done every other play. And that was the play that won that game for them.
As much as I like Chenander's, what he did last year, with his defense, his defensive play calling, he got worked in that Minnesota game. We adjusted in the middle of it and got back in the game, but it was punch, counter punch, flip tendencies. And we were slanting the wrong way on that long run.
Todd, you were going to say something.
Well, no, they still have to stop it. I mean, if you have these packages and if you execute well, the defense, they're going to see this quarterback come in and they're going to be prepared, or whatever, but you still have to stop it.
Yes, Greg. Why?
Have we, based on recent history and observation and heartache and pain, do we have a lot of faith in execution?
Hey,
I know what you're saying, though. I know what you're saying, Todd.
50-50 shot every play.
I will say this. I was on Twitter for a little bit during Big Ten Media Days, and I really got the idea from the responses from Husker fans I got that I don't need to be so negative, and we need to let's just see what happens. You know what I mean? I mean, we can bitch and moan or be the other side where it's like, it's duckies and bunnies. But I guess there's no point in just, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Part of it's we're going to speculate at some point about what we think is going to happen this season. But, I didn't see the point of tearing Scott Frost's words apart either, but because I thought he said some dumb things.
From a more macro level, and this is not just pertaining to Husker football. I mean, in life, is it possible to be critical without being negative? I feel like, and I'll try to throw some context in there. Anytime, and maybe it's the fact that it's 2022 and everybody's super sensitive, but every time there is any criticism, as constructive as it may come across, or intended, I feel like it is more often than not going to be perceived as negative. And I'm fine with criticism. Lord, look at me. I get criticized, walking to my van in the morning. I got a van. A rough one. These kids, man. These kids ain't got a filter anymore. Let me tell you. No.
Like you were like feeling like, gonna get jumped, some old lady sitting on her porch having coffee, cat calling you, at 7:30 in the morning.
The thing about the Nebraska offseason for a lot of college football teams was explained to be by a Nebraska media member who will remain nameless.
Will you tell us after the show?
No. And he said basically, if Nebraska fans expect you to be, they don't expect you to be negative or critical at all. So the fact that the media is critical or negative at any times is kind of astonishing. And I can't remember who he pointed out, but he had pointed out that some people had lost their jobs in the past over the fact that they were negative. And this is the off season, and there are a lot of fans that just expect you to talk about you know, how good this player is or how good this player is. And if you can't talk about that, then tell us that they came from their hometown and what their mom's spaghetti is like. You know what I mean? That's the kind of coverage that a lot of people really want. They do.
See, I want the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. And the thing, you can tell that for many years, the Nebraska athletic department sold their media guide, right? $10. And the media guide coming out of any athletic department is full of saccharine. There's not a negative word in it. And even if they went 3-9, they would still point out all of the good statistics and leave all the bad out. And that's what a lot of people really want from their coverage. And
we went 3-9, but we led the country in punting. Oh, wait, we didn't.
But so there you go.
I don't know anything about mom spaghetti or lasagna, but I do know this is all positives across the board here. Cam Jurgens in his time in Nebraska improved tremendously, you know, from the mishandled snaps at the beginning to being drafted earlier this spring by the Philadelphia Eagles, and has some really good beef jerky. And you can go get you some beef jerky, JURGY.com. It's worth it. I picked up 3 packs after the draft.
Buy a shirt too?
I did not buy a shirt. I did solicit an interview. And as we said earlier, we don't get guests on this show. So
we're long ways into this, but I should let this go.
The 3-hour episode. Here we are, John. Let's go.
All right. You know what I thought the most interesting thing to come out of Big Ten Media Days was? I was waiting for anything.
NIL.
It was Kevin Warren talking about the fact that expansion isn't true, but that's not it. And it's about that they're for college football playoff expansion. And the fact, here's the thing. We've got nil now, so players can get paid, and it's quite clear that some of them are making really good jing. Mm-hmm. Kevin Warren gets asked about how is this going to affect the personal lives of athletes, and he says we have a student advisory council. In other words, we don't fucking care. We're going to be carrying bags of cash to the bank. In the past, CEOs of universities, some of them somewhere would have stood up and said, this is wrong. They are students. This is not the part of the academic mission of our university is not to create a professional fucking football league. Have you heard any voices out of the academic side from any university anywhere complaining about any of this?
Because all that TV money, it goes to athletic departments, but it's greasing the skids for research and grants. And, you know, professors are probably happy that they don't have to rely on as much grant writing, you know, to get funding for research projects. So, yeah.
So watching the NFL, I imagine most people like watching the NFL. You watch the NFL now, it's 17 games? Mm-hmm. And you get to the playoffs, and it's not always the best team that's going to win. Not because of the playing, but because they're the fucking team whose players survive the carnage that is playing in the NFL.
It's like, and
you're going to now, you're going to now ask college students, because you're going to use the excuse, will they get paid? You're going to ask them to go into a 16-team playoff and put their bodies in line even more? And what are they going to get guaranteed for long-term health care?
Well, in that case, I think what you have to do is you have to shorten up the regular season like FCS does to have a 16-team playoff.
Will they do that?
They probably not with the TV money that's being raked in.
There you go. So I mean, really,
the two eminent super conferences of, you know, the Big Ten, the SEC, it's not really them. It's Fox Sports and ESPN. That's what's driving.
We're to the point now that we're looking basically at pro stuff, whereas just a few years ago, there would have been at least somebody complaining, what's this going to do to the baseball players who are going to get on a bus and spend 3 days out of the week on a bus? How are they going to get their studies done? Nobody fucking cares about any of this.
Yeah, when USC baseball's going on a week-long bus trip, you know, to Nebraska and Iowa in March and it's snowing, you know.
Yeah.
I'm shocked we haven't heard. Well, I am shocked we haven't heard anything from presidents and chancellors. You know, not a word.
Because they don't fucking care anymore.
Apparently not.
The pretense of the student athlete is completely gone. And they might as well, honest to God, we might as well just let them major in sports.
Probably not a bad idea.
Speaking of minor league football, guess what's coming back in February?
The USFL?
The XFL. I watched one USFL game, and good Lord, it was the most unwatchable product of football I've ever seen.
I am excited because the XFL is coming back. XFL is coming back to St. Louis.
Battlehawks again.
I hope the Battlehawks can fly again. Caw-caw! I took my oldest course in 2020. He was my only. But I took Garrett to the first Battlehawks home game. And we had a good time till he got tired and we left at halftime.
You guys didn't crush some beers and hot dogs?
No, because I was driving and he was 4.
I mean, the state of Missouri. I mean, it's not the league.
Yeah, come on,
down there
man.
in Missouri.
It's not Arkansas. They have some standards in Missouri.
No bullshit. You were either in Missouri or Missouri.
Hey, if
And
you're south of I-70, it's
does not
Missouri.
have those standards.
South of I-70, it's Missouri.
Well, hold on.
I mean, I was south of I-70 last weekend. I just called it Missouri the entire
The dome is south of 70. Damn.
Checkmate.
Shut up, Hoss. All right. Anything else for this week? We didn't cover a lot of territory, but the territory we covered it very thoroughly, and I appreciate all you guys.
I can't think of anything else, but I was going to ask this question. How far out are we from doing our game-by-game predictions?
Game by game.
Well, we have 30 days.
Predictions, but what episode are we going to do our season predictions?
Let's see.
The episode right before the season starts.
First game is the 27th.
So
yeah,
August
30 days from
24th, Wednesday.
The episode would drop on football eve on the 26th. Or we can do it the week prior so people can complain about it for a week before.
I like that. Let's always
all right.
Room to complain.
All right. So let's see here. 1, 2,
John's
3 weeks. 3 weeks we will do our season predictions.
I'm gonna. Oh, it doesn't even show up. Shit. We'll wait till later.
I don't want to know what's not showing up, John.
Yeah, you don't. Let's just go. We'll be done.
I feel like based on the hour here, John probably just snuck off screen to take his blue chew because he knows that it's going to take about 15 minutes to take effect, and he's got to get upstairs to Miss Coronation.
She has to get up at like 4.
You can get her up at 10. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
okay.
12 minutes till 10.
It'll be perfectly turgid.
You probably only need about 45 seconds total of that 12 minutes?
Jesus. Okay. Hey.
John, how many of your kids are living back at home now?
2.
There you go. Is that all of them? Or is there still is there a third one out there?
Yes. He lives a block away.
John, I'm still disappointed that I totally forgot to hit you up when I was in Minneapolis for the Nebraska game because I would have loved to drink some grain belts with you.
John doesn't drink anymore.
We'll go eat some food somewhere.
I'm excited. Tonic water. That's what I usually drink now. I drink tonic water because it's bitter.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm excited. I don't know if we've talked about this on the show. I think we did a couple weeks ago. But I'm going to be watching the Nebraska-Indiana homecoming game October 1st with John Justin. No.
When are we ever going to get you to a game in Lincoln?
Yeah, I do need to figure that out. Are you talking to him or me?
Both for that
matter. I need to figure that out this year.
Probably 2023. When my kids are a little older. My wife's already told me we're going to Disney World next year. So
don't go in July like I made the mistake of doing.
Is that Disney World in California or Florida?
Orlando.
Disney World's Orlando.
Oh,
We were on like a
5 years.
104-degree day.
They're not tall enough to be going to good rides.
This is what I've been told.
Yeah.
The decision
in a
was
fanny
made.
pack.
I had a fanny pack when I went to a Disney World in 1991.
I gotta say this: when I was at the Lake of the Ozarks over the weekend, one of my friends had a fanny pack, like one of the cross strap ones that we all put our phones and wallets in. I ordered one off Amazon when I got home. I was like, "It's brilliant! It's brilliant!" I'm not like sitting there going, "Oh, am I gonna jump in the water with my phone in my pocket?" Which I have done before. So yeah, I'm not hating on the fanny pack at all anymore.
Bringing them back. All right, folks. We appreciate you hanging out with us this week once again for the 5 Heart podcast. I don't know the exact number, but I know we're very close to episode 300. So if you're watching this in the comments or watch this on YouTube, start leaving comments of special surprises, special suggestions you would like for episode 300. It can't really be a surprise if you're giving us the idea. And we'll try to make one of those work. We just need a lot of lead time. What's that?
I got a special surprise for you right here.
I was gonna say a live show in person.
I plan on doing live shows this year, by the way.
Okay.
On YouTube.
Okay. Thanks, John.
There you go.
Appreciate you weighing in. For Todd Wolverton, who I apologize because I feel like you didn't say a whole lot. Todd, anything Husker related or not that you want to get off your chest? Because you've been awfully quiet this week.
No wisdom. I'm out in beautiful Kearney, Nebraska, and I'm exhausted. So
God's country.
Well, we're gonna let
Kearney, Nebraska, where I got my fucking face beat in one day.
They still talk about that here.
Kearney, Nebraska, where I drove under the arch a few times.
Yeah.
Never stopped.
Kearney, Nebraska, where UNK rejected me to get into grad school, but UNL let me in. Still trying to get that one out.
You can't spell drunk without UNK, folks. For Todd Wolverton, for Hoss Reuter, for John Dam Johnston, I'm Greg Mahochko, and this is the 5 Heart Podcast, where we remind you each and every week that 5 Heart is all the heart you need. John?
Go Big Red.
Omaha's and Ames.
Win the damn off season.